There you go.
Welcome to ASD's Water Dowsers Mastermind Conference Call. These talks, open to everyone, are scheduled for the third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and last for about an hour. Today is the 16th of December, 2019. I'm G from Northern California Dowsers in Redding, California. Jeanette and I will be joining your hosts, Sherry Hope and Ed Stillman, for tonight's program featuring Susan Collins. This will be recorded and accessible at ASD's website under the Members Only section. Please hold your questions until the end of the guest speaker's talk. Thanks. I'm now turning the program over to Sharon.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. This is actually the end of our second year. We're starting our third year in January. Amazingly, time has gone very fast. And so we have a few announcements. And one of them is that tomorrow at the same time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Time and 5 p.m. West Coast Time, is the Discover Dowsing call, and you can get the information for that conference call on dowsers.org, the ASD website. So it's on the front page. Just scroll down to the calendar. And let's see, I think Susan Spooler is on the line to give an announcement about the West Coast Conference. Are you on, Susan?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, beautiful. Hello. Thank you for having me on here. This is Susan Spooler, co-director of the West Coast Dowser Conference. The conference is going to be July 3rd to the 7th, 2020, this coming July, at the University of California, Santa Cruz, at the Stevenson campus where we had it last year. This will be, I believe, our 38th year having this wonderful, exciting, fun conference. We're really pushing for our youth program, as we're calling it. We'll be having lessons and classes for children that are ages 9 to 16. And we are also still collecting and accepting speaker applications if you're interested in being a speaker for the conference. And we should have our keynote speaker chosen here relatively quickly. If you have any questions or if you want to take a look at the website, it's www.dowserswestcoast.org. That's www.dowserswestcoast.org. There are email addresses and there are phone numbers on the webpage if you would like to contact us and if you'd like to receive an application to apply to be a speaker for the conference. Anything else that I forgot?
Sounds like you got it all.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm excited. We're going to have a great time this year, like always. I look forward to seeing everybody.
Thank you, Susan. Best post ever, guys. You gotta get to Santa Cruz on the 3rd of July. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, I've been to almost, every conference there in Santa Cruz except one in the last, about 30 years. And I just can't wait to go back again the next year. And it's a really wonderful conference where we meet friends. Everybody's a friend there, and great speakers. So please check out that website. All right, let's see. Get on with the show here.
Yeah. Are you ready for bio for Susan?
Yeah, go ahead, Ed. So my co-host here, Ed Stillman. And go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Susan Collins is an internationally acclaimed dowsing teacher, keynote speaker, and workshop leader. She uses traditional dowsing tools as well as power of heart and thought to detect and transform non-beneficial earth, environmental, psychic, and other energy patterns. She has presented at many international and regional conferences across North America, the United Kingdom, in Italy, Japan, and in the Middle East, and Susan has a dynamic global consulting practice. Her website is susan@dowser.ca. Well, Susan, it is a tremendous and true pleasure to have you here today with us, and again on the 20th of January. So please go ahead and please proceed.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ed and Sherry. I am truly honored to be invited to speak here. And Ed, you and I met years and years ago, and you have inspired me through all these years to practice water dowsing and improve my water dowsing. So I thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, I thank you, and I'm happy I could help you.
Absolutely. And I think, this is a lesson for all of us, that we stand on each other's shoulders, really. And we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel, because we go forward, helping each other as we go. And that is the power and the beauty of the American Society of Dowsers and the other dowsing societies as well. So it's a fabulous thing. So as Ed mentioned, we have tonight, December 16th and January 20th. We'll do as much as we can tonight, and then we'll just follow up. And if folks have questions, specific questions, then we're happy to answer those the best way that we can. So how to dose a water well? So first off, who the heck am I? I call myself a personal management consultant, because most people don't know what a professional dowser is. And even when I teach and I advertise my workshops, people generally have no idea. So I try to walk in normal footsteps. So personal management consultant. I've been dowsing since for about 20 years and doing water wells for about 15. I'm a past president of the Canadian Society of Dowsers and was the Dowser of the Year for them back in the day, and a member of the American Society, the Japanese Society, past member of the British, and with my colleague Graham Gardner, we are internationaldowsers.org. So, part of my journey for traveling and teaching around the world has been to find the tribe, if you will. Who are the people that share these skills? And I think everybody on the call shares these skills of sensing beyond what is average. And I say dowsing is completely normal, but not average. And with all the dowsing training that we go through, we simply are able to increase our sensitivity and recognize the very subtle electromagnetic vibrations we're picking up. So what is dowsing? It's the sixth sense. So we have our regular five senses of taste and smell and hear and all the rest of that. But the sixth sense, in my view, is the ability to detect and identify various types of electromagnetic energy. So the television throws out electromagnetic energy, the radio does, and moving water underground also sets up a frequency that we can tune into with our bodies. So a little more about me. I'm also known as the carrier of the sacred water woman, and that name was given to me by Mi'kmaq Elder. I'm very honored to have that name. So I've studied in the North American native tradition. I've studied with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the Buddhist tradition, and I've studied in the Celtic tradition and also the Kabbalistic tradition. And recently I was, 3 or 4 years ago, it's fairly recent, I was ordained as a metaphysical minister. So I am required by law to say my religion is metaphysics, which suits me perfectly, because I think that's what all of us are doing in dowsing, is determining, trying to figure out what is the nature of reality. And the conferences are metaphysical conferences. So even if people don't have an interest specifically in water dowsing, it is the nature of reality that we study. And water dowsing is a fabulous way to explore the universe, actually. So I started out clairsentient when I was a little kid, and I was afraid of the dark until I was 45, because in my day, And in a lot of people's day, we didn't talk about these experiences. I could feel beings around me, and people, of course, said it was imaginary. And I had a lot of fear. I never had a good experience with angels that some people seem to share. Everything for me was quite dark, and I was quite frightened. And it wasn't until I found the Canadian Society of Dowsers that I learned to start to identify some of these energies. And I do a lot of interdimensional communication now. I work with what we might call alien energies or ghost busting, this kind of thing. But what really kicked me off on the dowsing was being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 29. And I spent the next 23 years with my hands as claws. I was on terrible drugs. And what got me out of that finally was dowsing, bringing my body into resonance with the environment and bringing the environment into resonance with me. So my primary access into dowsing was through self-healing and self-care. And I notice in my journeys with all our dowsing groups that a lot of people come into dowsing for health reasons, either physical or emotional health. And then they get healed, and then they go off and go back into their own world. So I'm one of the ones that chose to stay in dowsing. I was able to improve my own health, and it is really my hope that other people don't have to go through this, reinvent the wheel. And I really I'm pleased to share the hard knocks that I have gone through. Through all of this, I've written a lot of books, and as Sherry said, my website is www.dowser.ca, and I've written maybe 7 books at this point, which is kind of is my journey through dowsing. So using protocols, doing water dowsing, doing archetypes removal, looking at orb energies, because I started taking photographs of orbs in about 2004 as well. It's kind of like when I stepped in and decided to explore this world, despite the fact I was afraid of the dark. When I stepped into it, a lot of things opened up for me. So part of my key is that as soon as I learn something, I write it down. And as soon as I publish a book, I learn something else. So that sharing has been one of my primary self-teaching methods, I guess. And always what we do in service for others creates the most viable opportunities. And honestly, with all the different things I do the water wells, I do health dowsing, I do business contracts, ghost busting, all kinds of stuff. But of all those things, somehow the most intimate and pleasing of all these things is the water well dowsing. Because when one can go out on the earth and quiet the mind and open the senses of the body and somehow feel the energy of water under the ground and then help a family get water for themselves and for their livestock, if they have that, or even for commercial purposes. There's something about assisting in that way that I think is a very special thing. And sadly, where I am in Eastern Canada, there are very few people who will stand up and douse wells. And I think it's a matter of confidence. Sherry and I were talking earlier about, she said she always had the confidence that she knew she could do it. But I think many people are quite nervous about doing it because it can be a very expensive mistake if somebody comes up with a dry hole, as we say. But I think trusting ourselves, trusting the technique, and trusting metaphysics is reassuring. So what the heck is dowsing after all? For many people at the beginning, dowsing was simply the detection of energy. Most people have a pendulum, and if you're sitting there listening, you can pick up your pendulum and you get your yes, you get your no, and you find things out. It's information dowsing, yes, no. But as the years have gone by, dowsers have learned to transform energy. So if we can detect that there is a problem, for example, we can transform the energy or the environment and make it beneficial. So I've codified this. And I thank all my teachers that I've studied with. That's part of the reason I've traveled everywhere, is to get the secret knowledge, if you will. So we can detect, is there a problem? Yes. Can we transform it with dosing? Yes. So at a high level, we can even transform the water itself and to remove toxins, this kind of thing. That's an advanced technique. We'll probably get to that at the very end of things, but we wanted to introduce that. More than anything, though, I used to say dosing is, you use tools, it's biofeedback, but more than anything now, I refer to dosing as being applied consciousness. So the more that we can focus on something, so that the thing quiet the mind, quiet the monkey brain, and we come into our bodies. A lot of us in the metaphysical world, and a lot of us dosers, we're familiar with the concept of chakras. A lot of us are kind of floating around in the upper chakras. To be a good water doser, and maybe to be a good doser at all, we need to be inhabiting our bodies fully. So the root chakra, lower chakras, and all of that. We are of this planet. And that I like to, many of us believe in, past lives, future lives. But right now we're here in these bodies in this time frame. So we have to honor that body. One very easy way to get back into your body is by doing the Om. And this is something the West Coast Conference does so well, that to get people's attention, they don't shout, they don't yell, they don't ring a bell. Some person just starts in with the Om, and then the room picks it up. And it is the most magnificent way to get back in your body, where you can really sense things. And once you're in your body, then you can apply your consciousness. So what one intends, one can manifest. And the last couple of years in particular, I've noticed for myself that physical matter is manifesting. And you might ask, what has this got to do with water wells? But one of the advanced techniques is to divert water streams through intention, basically, and simple techniques. But basically, we're getting agreement from the water to move, and it moves. So this is a really fine-tuning our consciousness. But what we do with dosing wells is a transferable skill. So in addition to the service that we provide with finding water, we can use the same sorts of skills to look for areas of geopathic stress, earth energies, environmental energies, psychic energies. So it's the techniques, the protocols, the going in to nature can be applied in many things. And I think as dosers, we really have, I can say we're gifted, and that we have a responsibility to use our gifts and to teach our gifts and to talk about it openly. Part of my, as a water well doser, I show up, I try to look as normal as possible when I go on a job. And if I'm doing a Skype call, meeting a client online or in person, I'll put on a suit jacket and I'll show up and I'll look like a professional. And I think that's something that we can be proud of, because a lot of us in our communities and in our families, I know we're not always respected for our gifts. People don't understand it, and there can be a lot of mocking involved within the family. So I think it's important that we stand proudly and say, we are dosers. This is what we do. We provide a service. So here I've got 4 sections I'd like to go through, and we'll see how far we get. The first section is what I call tuning the dosing tools. So we have pendulum, L-rods, bobbers, body dosing. I want to introduce a protocol and a triage protocol, which is all this stuff is what I do on site. I'd also like to look at finding your spirit guides who can help you and creating psychic protection. The next section is seeing the unseen, which is a really quick review of earth, environmental, and psychic stress energies, and then looking again at that transformation. How do we transform non-beneficial water or locations into beneficial? And then we'll look at water wells introduction with geology, drilling techniques, regulations, and well records. It gets a little sciencey in there, but I find it's a mix. Successful water well dosing for me is kind of a blend of magic and science. So I go in always looking professional, being able to talk to the drillers and hydrogeologists and whoever I'm meeting, and then move into our metaphysical place. So the third section is, in fact, connecting to the spirit of place. And that's where we go into the woo-woo section, but the spirit of place. And that's really where I tell you my methods. I do location, depth, and volume, and talking about flagging locations. The final section will be on advanced water dowsing techniques, which would be map dowsing, stream diversion, dealing with geopathic issues that inhibit flow, and removing psychic cords and curses that can prevent healthy flow. I know I've gone out onto a job, and I do my triage protocol, which I'm going to share with you. But I remember when I went into my place and I'm doing this, I found there was a curse on the land, and the water would not come in. So I removed the curse, but then I kind of thought, well, shall I tell my client this, or is that too strange? But I did tell him, and he said, oh, I inherited this land from my family, or from a parent, and the other family members were upset with him, and that they had basically cursed his success on the land. So this is it's a complicated, for me, I like to make things complicated, but it's like everything in the kitchen sink. So before I go on site, I have done everything in the kitchen sink to make sure I'm going to be successful on that. So I'd like to share some secret knowledge, and this comes from George Applegate, The Complete Guide to Dowsing, who is a British, well-known British water dowser. I believe he's passed at this point, but this is the secret knowledge, and that is the knowledge that you can program your subconscious mind. It's the only dowsing secret there is. So you can. So for me, I'm always very well prepared, but in fact, you could go on site and just with this programming, take me to the best place to drill. Boom, it's possible to do that. But for me, I need to quiet my mind before I do that. So it's to get into that state of grace, to be in the place where nature answers back. I'd also like to refer to Walt Woods, the late great Walt Woods, and he explained that water, in Letter to Robin, I think it was, that water moving down a line can set up an electromagnetic radiation, and that's what we're tuning into. So there's, I always talk about that when I have a client. I was doing a dairy farm the other day, and the father had brought me in, and there was a young teenage boy who was watching me, and I came in to report what I'd found, and then the father said that he thinks you're weird. So there I was, like wandering around in the snow, finding stuff, and I said it's okay to be weird as long as we can be useful. But I move into this discussion. There's an engineering science behind this, and engineers pick that up, and they're comfortable with that. The other thing that Walt said, which stuck with me all these years, once you know you can do it, you can do it. And that was just a remark he passed off. But once you know you can do it, you can do it. So I'm here to tell you, listening, everybody, you can do it. You can learn to dowse, and you can dowse water wells, and you can be accurate. And honestly, we need people stepping up and doing this. It's a wonderful opportunity to help our neighbors get it done right. What I like to say, what does it take to find water? And that is courage, because you go out there, it's $50 a foot. Maybe you might call in a 300 foot well. I know Ed has done some down at 1,000 feet, like just very, very deep. This is a non-trivial matter, and people can be out of pocket if you get the wrong answer for them. However, when a well driller comes out and he says, "Where do you want your well, ma'am?" and you point some random place, and that's where they put it. So I think if we do the best we can, do our research, get into the zone that we can, we have a much better chance of randomness to find an accurate place to drill. So I've been, with every client, I always ask at the end of it, please let me know how it goes. And sadly, very few people ever call me back. And I always take that as a good sign, because if they paid me the money and it hadn't come in, they'd be upset. So I've only had actually one call where it didn't come in, and there were extenuating circumstances on that. One of my favorite clients, I was out, this is a fellow in our area and Ontario, which is north of Toronto, which is up by Detroit kind of area. And he was an American. He'd come in from the Midwest somewhere. And I'm not sure what his business had been, but he had chartered a FedEx plane and brought up all his donkeys and cattle and pets and everything. And, I guess he had the money to spare, but I went out there, but he didn't have water on this beautiful farm that he had. So I went out there. We found the spot, and then he looks at me at the end. And I was about to charge him about $500 or something like that. And he looks at me and he says, $1,000 or nothing. So I said, $1,000. So that's my preferred client. But you never know. You never know. There was another job I did just local to me, because I'm in a fairly rural area where there was quite a bit of native presence back in the day. And this was a farm that had never had water in 100 years. And the farm, they'd had a cistern, which is, a place to hold their water. And I was able to go in there and with using the protocols, I removed some energies and we got the water. So, we don't use the word impossible. And often when I'm finished with a client, I'll say, ask your children or grandchildren to come out and stand on the flag and get your kids to tell you if this is a good place to drill, because they have fewer misconceptions or preconceptions. So I always suggest that for the little ones. So I've also been happy to work with agricultural and commercial. I was doing a distiller down here. We have a lot of limestone in my area, which is, as you may know, is full of pockets. And I was called in to do a distillery. The guy already had, they call the doser in at the last minute sometimes. There was already 7 dry holes on this man's property. And they had hit limestone, they'd hit caverns, and he was going to do a distillery in there. So he said, okay, let's imagine whatever we're drinking here, that the water is going to be suitable for that distillery. And the water came in for that. So it's a very rewarding activity, and certainly one that we need more water to. So the tools I use are the classic pendulum. Anything that swings around freely can be a pendulum. L rods, they're in the shape of an L. They're also called swing rods. The pendulum I use all my rods, or all my tools. The other rod I use a lot is a bobber, which is a thing that swings around. The Y rod I don't normally take on a job, because there's only so many tools you can take. The L rods I use for earth energies as well, and you can, too bad we don't have video here, but I do have videos on my YouTube channel. If you go into YouTube Susan Collins Doser, then I've got quite a few demos of using different tools. So I go in with the L rods, generally speaking, first, and then I check that with my pendulum. The other thing that happens, though, I noticed this happening a few years into my practice, was that wherever, I would talk to the client, and my driller was often on site, and I would have that little conversation. I'd say, okay, I'll do the job now, and I'd sort of walk off into the grassy area or the field, whatever it was, and then I found I had, when I got my tools out, I was already standing on the site. So this happened several times, and I noticed it, and I thought, aha, my body is already taking me to the place it's meant to be. So then I plant my flag there, and then I confirm it. I still get the tools out, the L rods, the pendulum, and walk around and say, please take me to the best place to drill. And very often it is, in fact, in that first place where I just quote unquote, happen to put down my tools. Sometimes I find myself walking backwards up a hill to get to that place, because the body is just taking the shortest direction. It doesn't wait for me to turn around. There's many techniques. We'll go into that a little bit. The other dowsing technique is simply with the fingers, of course. If you don't have your tools, there's no excuse. You can, and for those listening, if you want to try this right now, put your index finger and thumb together and make a little figure 8 with your fingers so that your fingers are locked, your hands are locked together, and say, show me yes, show me no. And you'll notice that there's a dowsing response. So we can harness up any part of our body, really, to get that dowsing response. The other tool that I'd like to shout out to was invented by John Wayne Blasingame, and I call it a Texas tea. I can't honestly remember what he calls it, but it's a piece of, it's a T-shaped sort of rebar, but it's in the proportion of the golden mean, 1 to 1.6, and I don't know whether he's still selling these things. I got it about a decade or so ago, but I call it an earth energy amplifier. And if John Wayne is still making those, try to get one from him, or just make one yourself using that 1 to 1.6, the golden mean ratio. So what I do with that, and I generally use that after I've done my work and flagged the site. I always want the client to stand on the site so that they can feel it. I normally cite maybe 3 different locations and ask the client to stand on each. And even though the 3 locations may be viable, the client might respond only to one. So then we can say there's your spot, very likely, and then get your children and grandchildren. But with John Wayne's tool, I call it the Texas tea. I put the base of the tool on my flag. I put my feet like right on either side of that, so I'm standing. So my lower chakras, my whole body is right over the flag. I've got the base of this metal T on the flag, and then the width of the T. I put my hands on either side and get my client to do that too. And it amplifies the energy. It's the only thing I've ever found that amplifies the energy to the point that clients can engage with it. And that they don't always feel it, but sometimes they'll say, "Oh, I feel tingles in my legs," or "Oh, I had one client, and this is another farm where they'd never had water in 100 years, and this was a real estate agent who owned the farm, I guess. And I got her out on this Texas tea, and she said, "Oh, I can see blue lines," and I've never seen that, but somehow just completely open-minded, using this amplifier, she could suddenly perceive the veins of water. So I guess the truth is, it really doesn't matter what tool you use, as long as you interpret it in a way that's consistent with you. I was out at the Atlantic Society of Dowsers a couple of years ago, and I think it was Angus McDonald. Sorry, Angus, if I've got your name wrong. He was demonstrating dowsing with an egg. This is also something they do in India, I understand, a different type of egg. You walk around with the egg in your palm, and when you're over the site, the egg falls over. So you can do this with all kinds of things. Anyway, the basic tool is the body, and the peripheral tools amplify what the body already knows. But you can look on my YouTube channel, and you'll see some of those videos. So before I start, I don't wear a watch anyway, but it's a good idea to take off any magnetic jewelry, or if you've got some. Definitely get anything off your shoulders. I see a lot of people trying to learn to douse, and they're carrying a heavy bag on one shoulder or on both shoulders. So you want to, first off, free your body. And I see the prep to dowsing is kind of like being an athlete. Very often when I'm on a call, I have to drive an hour, and I'm in the car in the stationary position, being surrounded by the frequencies of the car and the stress of the road. So you get out of the car, you've got to stretch a little bit, get back in your body, whatever that takes, and leave your heavy bags elsewhere. Put it on the ground. Also, I don't douse if I have a cold, and or I've been drinking, or I don't do recreational drugs, but it doesn't help. We have piezoelectric places in our bodies that help us to detect electromagnetic energy And when we're stuffed up or muddled up, it's harder to be accurate for that. So out of respect for the clients, if you're going to go on a job, be professional. And if you've got a cold that day, just take a rain check. Or if it's too snowy up here where it's extremely cold, I hope I've done the last well of the season. I was out in the first big snowfall, and it was like super cold. So I've got my full on winter clothes and ski pants and mitts and the full gear, because if you're out there and you're cold, it's very hard or too hot, I would say. For those of you in the south, if you're too hot, it's hard to relax in the body. We need a quiet body and a still mind in order to be successful. So those are little things. So if you've got your pendulum in hand, everybody pick up your pendulum. And what you want to do is practice always. So you've just gotten out of the car, and you just want to make sure your signals are okay. So the basic one, if you've got your pendulum, is pendulum show me my yes, pendulum show me no. Because sometimes people's polarity gets reversed. I remember doing a personal session once years and years ago where I was 20 minutes into somebody else was doing a reading for me, and halfway through she realized that her signals were all reversed. So she said, everything I just said to you is the opposite. So it's a good idea to start every session, show me yes, show me no, which is very good. The point two, and I remember being in a class with Ed once, and the point two, you follow, and I think Ed, you were quoting Walt on this one. You follow the forward swing of the pendulum. So if you're coming on site and you only have your pendulum, you get it swinging back and forth in front of you and ask where's the best place to locate a water well, and it will start angling off, and you follow the forward swing of that. So that's very easy. The other aspects that I use, and I'm not sure if everybody uses this, but it's the notion of disconnecting non-beneficial energy. So if you've got your pendulum in hand, ask pendulum, show me the motion for disconnecting non-beneficial energy, and then give it a little tap on a hard surface and say, pendulum, show me the motion for enhancing energy. So this disconnect and enhancing energies, this is great for disconnecting non-beneficial substances or processes in a situation. It's exactly what I used for my own self-healing. So we remove non-beneficial energy and replace it with beneficial energy. The other excellent thing to check with your pendulum is positive electrical charge and negative electrical charge. And then I'm quite a stickler on language, so I refer to non-beneficial or beneficial. Some people refer to negative or positive energies, but for me, negative and positive, those words describe electrical charges. And since we are dealing with electromagnetic energy when we are locating dowsing wells, it's good to know what the electrical charges of something are. So again, with your pendulum, just pick it up and say, pendulum, show me the motion for positive electrical charge, and then show me the motion for negative electrical charge. You can practice that on a battery, because you'll notice a battery has a little plus and a minus at either end, and that will help you determine what electrical charges are, and it should be balanced. The other major tools I use are charts, and I'm gonna be boring here with some of this technical stuff, but it's taken me years and years and years to figure it out, so I want to share it with you. I use a plus-minus chart, minus 10 to plus 10. It looks like a protractor, and that's very handy. If you're looking at what is the overall viability of this water, it's not enough just to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how beneficial is it, but you need that minus 10 to determine if this water is non-beneficial. So if you're out on a rural property, there will be another place where there's water generally, and that's in the septic system. So you can go over, find out what the septic bed is and go over that and say, please indicate the energy of the water in the septic bed, and you'll you'll get probably a negative number. In the city, if you don't have access to the rural areas, you can do this over your sewer lines. And in the city, and we had a caller that called in quite early, talked about finding water in a pipe, an old pipe people had forgotten. But as a way of practicing for beginner dowsers, if it's summertime where you are, you can get a hose going and run some water through it, and then just go back and forth, and you'll see what the running water feels like. Or over find a hydrant and go and stand beside that, and you'll feel the big water main energies go by. The same thing with the sewer lines. You can practice feeling what non-beneficial water feels like by standing over the sewer. So of course you do all this as practice before you get out there. Okay, so I want to talk now about the protocol methods that I use. So that's basically the technical stuff. You've got some tools. You get in your body, you quiet your mind. So I use several protocol methods. I'm going to describe three. One is the dosing protocol, which I have used for my self-healing mostly. The other is the compass directions protocol, and the third one is the triage protocol. So I'm going to go through each of those. And for the dosing protocol, those of you who are familiar with me, I had the arthritis all those years, and it's dosing that got me out of it. So I haven't been on drugs for 10 years, and my body works again. So that's one of the reasons I stayed in the dosing world. Was for my health, and the more I have given in service, the healthier I've gotten. And I'll get launched on another topic here, but I talk about earth purpose and soul purpose. And it seems part of my purpose is to teach dosing to people. And the more I do, the healthier I get, and the more prosperous I get. So it all works out well. So I'm going to say a lot of words with the protocol. I will send a free PDF of the dosing protocol and how to dose with pendulums and the dosing charts. If you send me an email with water wells in the subject line to susan@doser.ca, I'll send you some PDFs. So you don't have to scribble it all down, but I'm just telling you what it is right now. First step is to balance your physical body. You find a quiet time, focus your intention to balance, harmonize, and ground every aspect of your being. So I go to the gym. I think it's really important, if we can, whatever our physical state is, keep your body working. Go for a walk, do whatever, do something, so that we can be healthy. The next step 2 of the dosing protocol is the connection, and I say for the best and highest good, or however you address the divine. And so you can say God, or I've been kicked out of houses, I must say, by people wanting me to find water for them, but my words did not fit their religious tradition. So I'm always extremely careful when the first contact with the client. I ask them, I say for the best and highest good, or what is most appropriate for you. And you try to work as much as possible within each client's culture and tradition. So because I teach in different places in the world in different traditions, I have learned to be quite respectful of that. And so for the protocol, I should say this too. I did a Bible version of the protocol. So sometimes Bible groups buy that and study that. I also have a Muslim version for when I've taught in the Middle East. And then over the years, different people have translated it. So I take my classic version, but I've now got it in different languages: French, German, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, Swahili, Slovenian, Romanian, all kinds of things. And that's all on my website. And I can send you the protocol in a language if I have it. So this is, dosing is not just a North American thing. This is what I call our birthright technology. And certainly, if we stay within the biblical tradition, it would be easy to see that Moses, for example, when he struck the rock with a rod and water came out, we can say perhaps Moses was a water dancer. Anyway, I discuss that further in the Bible edition of one of my books. But we're connecting in for the best and highest good. I ask to also connect with my human body for my good health. I ask to connect with the intelligent and beneficial energies of nature, and I ask to connect with my spirit team, and that's all I connect with. So I want to get in my body. I want to get in with the beneficial energies of nature and the divine source. So this is like being a little submarine. I'm going in my submarine, and or the Merkaba, if we want to go from a Kabbalistic perspective, and everything now it's like periscope up. So I'm protected. I'm safe and protected because I've connected with divine source and my extreme traditions. At this point, I ask for the assistance. I no longer connect with anything else. But at this point, I ask for the assistance of beneficial beings in resonance with myself, with the divine, with the client, who can assist me in finding the best place to site a water well, or whatever the case may be. So this is because most of where we've been, everywhere we've been, other people have been before. In North America, we have trod the ground more lightly, but in many places on the planet, there's hundreds, thousands of years of people who've been there first. So I'm shout out to my colleague Graham Gardner. I took him on a walk into an area here near my hometown that had a native stone circle in it. And it had probably been used, within the last couple of hundred years, which isn't really very long. And his comment, which always I thought was fun, was he was very pleased because he got to connect with the natives. And he says, at home in Scotland, you can't get past the Romans. So the layers and layers and layers of consciousness that stand between us and our target need to be removed. And this reminds me of something that Ed taught me, and I'll mention it now and I'll mention it again, is that he had always suggested that our dowsing be free of thought forms from persons alive or dead. So that kind of ties back into that one job I had with a family. It cursed the guy who got the land with the well. But it can all, and the old farmers, they didn't think, the 100-year-old farms that never had water, there was something in them that thought, oh, there's no water here, can't get water, and had trucked in water for 100 years. In fact, the water was there. So we want to quiet the mind. We want to quiet the body. We want our dowsing to be free from thought forms. But we do want to pick up the energy of the earth. Then, of course, when you're in your protocol, you want to check your yes or no, you disconnect, and all the rest of that. I do a forgiveness prayer, and this was taught to me by the late Many Horses. And some people think it's, why are you doing forgiveness as part of dowsing, as part of water well dowsing? But there can be a lot of pain on the land. So we're not just, there's the geotechnical aspects of the earth, and then there's the geopsychic aspects. If it's a battleground, or people have died, or there's been whatever's gone on there before, that has to be healed out. Very often, that has to be healed out in order for good water to come in. So forgiveness is an important part of that, and I'll say that for you now. Creator, forgive me. I forgive let's say do ourselves. I'll do ourselves. And all this protocol I'm doing with the pendulum running. So when I'm doing sessions with people, I do the protocol myself first, and then I do the protocol with the person or with the client. And any differences I know with the client then. They will say, Creator, forgive us. We forgive ourselves. We forgive all those who've harmed us. We release them from our body, minds, and spirits, so we are free. We ask all those we have harmed to release us. So in this case, I got some no's on that. So for at least some of the people listening, because we're kind of a group consciousness here, there are forgiveness issues. So that before your dowsing can improve, you may have to look at some forgiveness stuff. And I'll quote Sandy Mack in the next bit here. She taught me that. Sandy Mack is a past president of the American Society of Dowsers. If you can't forgive somebody, you give the accountability for the action back to them. So I think it is true that in our lives there are some things that are unforgivable, but we don't have to forgive. We just give the accountability back. So it's their thing now, not our thing. So we get clear. So once we get clear on the forgiveness, we keep going. Step 4 of the protocol is disconnecting non-beneficial energies. In the case of doing a water well, I would disconnect non-beneficial assumptions, non-beneficial communications, any non-beneficial energy. And then step 5, maximizing the energy field. And as Ed has taught me, I believe, Ed, you came up with this, is Lord, guide my hands, which I always use that because I like to say it's not us. Once we put ourselves in service through this water well dowsing, it is not us anymore doing it. And to think that we are doing anything, honestly, I believe is ego. So we align ourselves with the divine source, and we ask to be guided in service for the sake of the children, for the sake of the animals, for the sake of the elderly. So we don't. I think it's most effective not to ask for my sake, but to ask for the sake of all beings, kind of thing. Then we do the permissions, the may, I, can, I, should I. The dosing is the easy part. Step 8 of the dosing is creating an ongoing energy system to automatically create the conditions for perfection. So we do this if we're doing well remediation, for example. We can ask that the well be automatically be remediated. So that's a lot of words, but honestly, if you don't have the foundation, if you don't go in there like really, really clear, really, really in service, then you're just waving sticks around. I often say any idiot can dose, but to dose accurately, there is some focusing that has to go on in that. The end of the protocol is to disconnect so that you don't drag all the stuff around with you. Anyway, send me an email, susan@doser.ca. I'll send you the protocol, how to dose with pendulum and some chart information. So it's already 10 to 9. I can't believe it. Or it's 10 to 6 in the West. Let me just plow on here because we are going to come back January 20, God willing. And I'll keep going with this. I want to share another protocol I use, and that is the directions protocol. And again, this was taught to me by Many Horses, who is a Wet'suwet'en elder from northern BC. And I think most people familiar with Native tradition are familiar with honoring the directions. But to me, I do this as the beginning of my water well practice. When I get on site, the actual beginning of the dosing, I do the directions. So I start facing in the east, which is the beginning. I move to the south, where the strength is. The west is completion. The north is ethics. I call on Father Sky, the grandfathers, Mother Earth, and the grandmothers. And in the Native tradition in Canada, in any case, I think elsewhere as well, the grandmothers are in charge of everything. So doing the directions and calling on these metaphorical archetypes, if you want to call it that, and I'm using my rods. At this point, I'm using my rods. I'm opening and getting, yes, do I have the cooperation of the East, of the South, of the West? So one thing it's doing is plugging me in electromagnetically to where we are. So I'm looking, before I've come there, I've looked on Google Earth to see, what's around there. But once I'm on site, I want to know where the East is, the South is, the West is, the North is. I remember doing, I'm being asked to go out, and I began the process with my client, and I started in the East, the places of beginning, yes. I went to the South, the resources, yes. I went to the West, completion, and I got a no. And I said, sir, there is no point, this was like 10 minutes into the job, there's no point carrying on because we do not have the energy of completion on this project. And he was disappointed, but I think he was looking to buy in that case. He hadn't bought the property yet. And it made sense that energy of completion wasn't there in that case because this is a big open field, no trees around, and he wanted to build a trout pond as part of his house. And it just wasn't, it just wasn't the right place. So I always use that, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the directions. So now we're getting into the full dosing, and we're opening ourselves interdimensionally to all kinds of things. One thing I've noticed when I've opened the dimensions, different things happen, different signals happen. One is my ears might pop, so that there's a sense of a pressure change. The other thing that's happened is 3 or 4 times in my life when I have been doing this, my height actually changes. So I've noticed this in a group of people where suddenly it's as if I'm standing on my toes, and people see it and I feel it, and then I go back down. But when we go interdimensional, we're actually in a shift. And I'll talk another day on the quantum universe and the multiverse, which is very exciting, explains a lot of this. But the main point here is that if we're going to go traveling in the multiverse, in the interdimensions, we need some psychic protection. And that is another reason to do the protocol, that you're guided by the divine source and your spirit team. One thing, because I work a lot with the alien community also, and there's a lot of trickster energy. You know, what's interesting to see is that many of the traditions experience trickster energy, and certainly the alien energies can be quite tricky. So what I always say is maintain your sovereign being. You got to be who you are. You have to know who you are. Another thing I just want to put out there, we're almost out of time here, which I'm sad about, but the thing of dimes, many of you may be finding dimes in places. Just make a note of that, and Spirit seems to be leaving dimes. I'm thinking dimes are the new orbs. We used to see a lot of orbs. Now we're seeing dimes. Even the alien community is finding dimes. Anyway, we've got like a couple of minutes. Shall I keep going, Sherry and Ed, or what do you want me to do?
Why don't you go ahead and go for like about another 5 or 10 minutes?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I start talking faster and faster, so I'm sorry about that. Maybe I will. I'm gonna talk about the triage. Well, maybe I should talk. I have another. I'll save the triage protocol, which is sort of elaborate. I'll quickly talk about the. Should I do that? No, I have a whole section on the water cycle and drills. I'm going to talk about. I'm skipping around here. Sighting the well, because this is key. When you go on site, you want to avoid electrical wires, local leachate plumes, proximity to other wells. Find out where the driveway is. The ground must slope away from the well, and the well has to be accessible for maintenance. Every jurisdiction will have its own set of regulations. These are generally available if you Google your state or provincial government and look for well records or Ministry of the Environment. We are very fortunate in Ontario, and I think a few jurisdictions have this, that licensed wells are recorded at the ministry. And certainly in Ontario, we can call these up. So before I go on site, in addition to mapping the place through Google Earth, I look at the well records and for the neighborhood and check locations, the depths that they found water, and the type of rock. I was out maybe 2 weeks ago at a place. Somebody would he had bought part of a farm. The farmer had severed off a section that did not include a well. I called up the well records, and I found that right where this guy was, there were 7 dry holes right around him. And so that was a very important thing to tell the client right at the outset. Sir, I don't think he really knew that the driller had actually called me in for that one, but he was surrounded by dry holes. But half a mile, a kilometer away, there was a well at 250 liters per minute, which is a big well. We're liters up here, gallons per minute. and another one. So we go through the well records and we see at what depth is the water and what does the rock look like. Anyway, and then we just abandon. We do all that research. We do all that mental research. We know pretty much what we're standing on, and then we cast ourselves into the ground. And let me just go back to my directions protocol that I mentioned. And in the West is where the grandfathers are. And here's one of my secrets, more secret knowledge, that I've had the fortune to have many teachers, many male teachers who have taught me how to do water. Joe Smith was one of these people. There's several of them. So when I'm going into the West and I face the West and I say, grandfathers, will you assist me? I'll get a yes. And then I'll get a very specific, this sounds bad, which of the sky dowsers is willing to help me? And I might get a few. I might get 2 or 3 names. Yeah, you'll help me, you'll help me. And then I ask, okay, can you guys work together? Sometimes I get yes, sometimes I get no. Then I just ask these sweet energies, well, go find the water and tell me what it is. And I do that for the grandmothers as well, for those teachers. So I'm really, for me, I'm living in the normal world, but I'm fully also in the interdimensional world. And the protocol is a way we can safely maneuver through that. We get in, and then we get out again. So when I'm dowsing, I'm completely, it's not me, I become the avatar for something else. And, it's the magic, it's the science, but it seems to work. So, somebody asked me once, well, does dowsing work? I have a little video. I was interviewed on television in about 2004, and the interviewer asked, well, does dowsing work? And I said, well, it's just in the results that, there's the water. And some people say, well, you could drill anywhere and get water. But, 2 weeks ago I was on a place and the guy was surrounded by dry holes. And the same with that distillery guy in the same area. He had, I think, 5 dry holes on his property. So there is a need for water dowsers. It's an ancient technology, but there is still a huge need for this. Let me just say quickly about the aquifers in North America, especially in the States. The aquifers, which is the underground water, the groundwater, they are being drawn down faster than they are being replenished. So there's a lot of places that will not have water. Rob Thompson, shout out to him. He's a water well dowser based in Santa Rosa. I spoke with him a while back, and he said he was going down into deeper aquifers. He didn't even know they were there. But at some point, we're going to run out of water. And at some point, it'll be more and more important to be able to find sources of good, clean water. And of course, it goes without saying that we need to be careful with our water use. And this speaks to the whole environment. And, I'm really confident that dowsers, beyond the practice of water well dowsing, that we do have information to share with the general public who perhaps aren't as sensitive as we are, who don't think about these things as much or don't know what to do about it, that through our ability to communicate interdimensionally with nature and with other energies, that we may be able to assist in finding solutions to some of the problems that are facing us. So I'd like to shout out again to the West Coast Conference, which is in Santa Cruz, which truly is tremendous fun. I love it. And that was July 3 to 7. Also, the National ASD Conference is June 3 to 7 in Plymouth, New Hampshire. In Canada, the Canadian Society of Dowsers has a spring conference. The Questers have conferences as well. Most of these things I try to keep on my website. We really are a community. Also, a shout out to Japan, where I teach quite a bit, and I'm happy to be able to do that. So I really do feel that we're connected in a broad way. So should we leave it there for now, and I can come back and talk more? I only got a little bit of the stuff, but what do you think?
I think that's great. Thank you so much, Susan.
Okay.
Appreciate that. And we've got some announcements, I think, and maybe a synopsis from Jeanette.
Hi, thank you so much, Susan. We appreciate you. And what we've noticed over the years, you're always giving grace and gratitude for all your teachers, and you're just wanting to share that information. And once again, if you want to get to know a little bit more about Susan's work, www.dowser.ca. And, you know, we really appreciate you explaining your personal management and how you just want to share. And as you're learning, you're writing books, and now you've got 7 books, and many more books will be coming because you love to share as you're learning. And thanks for reminding, you know, we just need to trust ourselves, trust our techniques, and this will gain confidence with this. And when we're dowsing, I like the definition how we're detecting energy. It's a matter of finding yes and no information, and, you know, now it's a transforming energy. It is wonderful that as you're traveling, you're getting the sacred knowledge, and you're able to travel abroad and bring that information back and help others and inspire others, and we greatly appreciate that. And we appreciate you giving your gifts and sharing gifts of others. And we appreciate you also giving the triage protocol. You gave 3 protocols, dowsing, the compass, and triage. So please email Susan so you can get a PDF format. She's an excellent instructor, so hopefully Susan will also, things will work out, and you'll be able to teach at the West Coast Conference if everyone's schedules are in alignment. And we look really forward to seeing you next month, the 3rd Monday. And thank you again just for being a light and sharing your gifts.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Susan, go ahead and give out your email address again, please.
Okay, my email address, Susan, SUSAN, at Dowser, DOWSER.ca, and put water wells in the subject line, and I'll send you out the PDF of my protocol, some charts, and how to dose with a pendulum. And my website is www.dowser.ca. That links to my YouTube channel, and I've got a bunch of media stuff. But I've got 35 YouTube, something like that, and just browse around in there, and you'll hear me talk more.
Great, thank you. And please remember that we will be on again on January 20th. That's the 3rd Monday of 2020. And Ed, did you have a question or something to add?
The only thing that I would like to add is, Susan, what is the deepest well that you douse successfully? That's one thing that gives you a bit of information.
Well, I think it was like my first one. It was like 370 feet.
Uh-huh. And is that the deepest you've gone at with your whole career? Oh, okay.
I think so. I think
Very
so because we have like we're on the moraine here, so we have limestone and moraine and a little bit of granite. So basically, most of my wells I can get them in at about 76 feet. There's a lot of them at 76 feet. And then
we are in different parts of the country because my deepest well that I have done is 1,900 feet.
Is that out at the Enchantment Ranch there?
Pardon me?
Was that in the Enchantment Resort?
That was in Enchantment, yeah. That's one of them, and other areas locally with the Enchantment area, yes. Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough. I so respect what you were able to do.
Well, it was difficult, but you just go down into the well just like you do, and I've done many of the things you talked about, and took myself down and found where the water was flowing and knew what depth it was, and so we just did it from there and took it from there. Yeah.
Well, God bless you.
God bless you too. You're doing great. Thank you.
You so much. Okay, so have a happy New Year and a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah, and I look forward to chatting again in January.
Okay.
And we look forward to having you too, Susan. If any of you have questions for next time, go ahead and you can email me, sharryhope@gmail.com, SHARRYHOPE. So email any questions that you might have, and Susan can go over those next time. Okay, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here, and have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes, indeed. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You.